The heat lay heavy over the scrubland, pressing the air flat against thorn and stone. In a shallow hollow between two acacia shadows, a lion rested in sand scraped raw. The ground around him was scarred with furrows, the last record of a struggle that had spent itself. Now his body held a strange stillness, ribs lifting only in shallow draws. A thin wire snare cinched one hind leg, biting above the paw where fur gave way to swollen flesh. The metal disappeared under blood and dust, then reappeared where it was twisted tight and anchored to a thorn root. The trap had done what it was built to do: steal strength slowly, turn distance into a cage. Flies gathered at the wound. His eyes stayed open, dull with fatigue. From the brush line, a lone man stepped into view. He did not come straight toward the lion, and he did not hurry. Each footfall was placed gently, avoiding branches that could crack like alarm. A radio rested silent against his chest, and a small kit rode high on his back. Within the lion's reach, he stopped and waited. The lion lifted his head a fraction, then faltered. A low sound rolled out of his chest, thick, uneven, more vibration than warning. It carried none of the sharp edge that once claimed territory. The man lowered his gaze and held his hands open, giving the lion space to read him. Minutes stretched. The lion's ears flicked toward the man, then away again, listening for what did not come. No shouting, no sudden reach. Only the hush of insects and the faint scrape of wire when the lion shifted, testing the impossible. His tongue touched his nose once, dry and slow. When his head sank back to the sand, the man moved closer, one careful step at a time. He knelt at an angle, leaving the lion a view of open ground. From his kit he drew a cloth and a small bottle of water, dampening the fabric and holding it near the lion's muzzle. The lion's nostrils widened, pulling in the trace of moisture. His jaw worked once, a quiet swallow. The man spoke softly, barely more than breath. "Easy," he said. Only when the lion's gaze softened into a slow blink did the man extend 2 fingers to the fur near the hip, far from the trapped leg. The contact was light, a question. The lion's skin rippled beneath the coat, then settled. His tail flicked once, then lay still. The man kept his hand steady until the lion's breathing deepened by a small degree. With that first permission earned, the work began. The man brushed sand away from the wire's twist, revealing swelling and the tight bite of metal. The lion's muscles tensed and another broken rumble rose, then faded into a long exhale. The man paused, then reached for compact cutters and slid them under the loop with slow precision. The first cut loosened the pressure without snapping the wire back into skin. Blood seeped dark and steady, and the lion's toes flexed for the first time in hours. The man made a second cut and eased the loop open. The snare fell into the sand like a dead thing, harmless at last. The lion did not stand. He only lay there, trembling as pain changed shape into exhaustion. The man rested his palm against the lion's flank, feeling the rise and fall, feeling life insist on itself. A wind arrived, bending the grass and lifting dust into the light, and the lion's breathing stayed with it, steadying. He returned before the sun had shifted far, moving through the thorn with the same measured quiet he had used when he first found the lion. Nothing about his pace suggested panic, yet every choice carried purpose. A small bundle rode against his shoulder, and the weight of it did not make him faster, only steadier. From a distance, the lion followed him with heavy eyes that did not blink often. The lion remained in the scraped hollow, pressed into sand that held the shape of his ribs and shoulder. The freed wire lay nearby, dull and curled, but the leg it had held was worse now in its release. Swollen, hot, the skin split where the pressure had lived. Each breath lifted dust from his muzzle. He did not try to rise. He only shifted once, and the injured limb trembled under him before he let it fall back into place. The man stopped well outside the lion's reach and lowered himself to one knee. He kept his hands low, palms visible, as if offering proof that nothing hidden was coming. He waited, letting the lion decide whether the space between them would hold or break. The animal's ears angled forward, then eased back again. A low vibration moved through his chest, not a roar, not a warning, only fatigue. The man opened the bundle slowly. He unwrapped gauze, antiseptic, a small syringe, and a light pole with a padded end meant only to guide distance, not control. A bottle of water caught the sun and glimmered faintly. The lion's gaze stayed fixed on the man's fingers, tracking every motion. He poured a little water into a shallow cup and slid it forward across the sand. It stopped short of the lion, close enough to scent, far enough to refuse. The lion stared at it, then extended his tongue in a slow, cautious reach, tasting the rim. The first swallow was small. The second came easier, and his throat worked with a faint rhythm. Time narrowed. The swelling at the lion's leg climbed higher, pressing tight against skin that could not stretch forever. The man watched the paw flex and stop, as if the nerve signals were arriving late. The wound was no longer only pain. It was heat, weakness, and the risk of infection settling in. The man shifted his weight by inches, testing the lion's tolerance. The lion's head lifted, eyes widening, and the man froze immediately. He spoke once, low and plain. "It's okay." When the lion's head lowered back into the sand, the man moved closer, not closing the gap all at once, but reducing it in small, honest portions. He dipped gauze into antiseptic, letting the scent rise gently rather than suddenly. The lion flinched at the sharpness, nostrils tightening, but he did not pull away. The man reached toward the leg and stopped short, allowing the lion to watch the hand hover. Only after a long pause did he touch the fur above the swelling, then withdraw, then touch again, an approach that asked permission repeatedly. The lion's tail moved once, a slow sweep that left a line in the sand. His breathing stayed shallow, yet it did not break into panic. Beyond the acacias, wind slid through the grass and softened the heat for a moment. The man steadied his hands, knowing calm was the only language that could keep time from winning. Darkness did not fall in a clean line. It seeped into the bush under thick cloud, turning late afternoon into bruised gray. The air cooled enough to raise gooseflesh on the man's arms, and the land changed its voice as light drained away. Far off, hyenas began to call, first one then another, thin laughter stretched across the scrub. Insects rose from the grass in a steady hum, and the wind shifted, carrying the smell of damp soil and old blood. The lion lay where he had been, but the stillness around him was no longer calm. His flank trembled with each breath, and the injured leg twitched in small involuntary jumps, as if the body could not decide whether to fight or surrender. The man kept close without pressing in, working from the edge of the lion's tolerance. He had traded sight for touch now, fingertips learning swelling and torn skin. Each time the lion's muscles tightened, he paused until the tension eased again. He cleaned the wound in slow circles, letting antiseptic soak through dust and dried blood. The lion's ears pinned back, then lifted, listening to the night. A low rumble moved in his chest, broken by a soft grunt when gauze brushed a raw edge. The man leaned back immediately, hands open as though retreating from a flame. "Easy," he murmured, and the word disappeared into the wind. With the light fading, he relied on small sounds that told him what the lion could bear. A longer exhale meant pain had settled. A sharp inhale meant he had gone too far. The lion's tail dragged once through the sand, then stilled, the tip twitching like an exposed nerve. The man reached for a syringe and kept it low, letting the lion register the shape without suddenness. After waiting, he placed it carefully into the shoulder muscle and delivered a measured dose meant to dull panic without stealing away awareness. Minutes passed in a careful blur. The lion's breathing deepened, yet his eyes stayed open, heavy and watchful. Somewhere nearby, a nightjar called from an unseen branch. The hyenas grew quieter as if listening back. The man packed the wound with clean gauze and wrapped it, securing the bandage tight enough to hold, loose enough to spare circulation. His hands moved with the gentleness of someone handling something already broken. Then, beneath the grass line to the man's left, a faint metallic tick answered the wind. He froze. It came again, not from the discarded wire near the lion, but from deeper brush hidden under leaves. Another snare line, stretched taut, quivered against a thorn stem. The trap had been set wide, meant to take whatever stepped through, lion, antelope, even a young calf from the grazing edges. The man followed the line by feel, fingers finding wire, cold and thin, leading toward a second loop half buried in sand. The night had concealed it until now. The lion's head lifted, sensing the change, and his nostrils flared toward the dark. His body tried to gather itself, pain rising like a tide, and a deeper growl rolled out, instinct waking despite exhaustion. The man held his palm toward the lion without looking away from the wire. "Stay," he whispered, not as command, but as a quiet hope that trust would hold. In the dim, the bush felt closer, crowded with unseen movement, and the snare line trembled again, as if something out there had already begun to pull. With the last of the wire cleared away and the bandage secured, the hollow settled into a quiet. The lion gathered himself in stages, as if standing was something he had to remember. First the shoulders rose, then the haunches followed with a shaky pull. Sand slid from his coat in sheets. When the injured leg touched the ground, it buckled and his body dipped, breath leaving him in a rough burst. The man stayed low, hands open, making his shape smaller in the darkness. He did not reach to hold the lion up. The wild did not accept that kind of help. He waited instead, ready only if the lion collapsed fully. Cloud cover thickened, and the last light turned the lion into an outline, mane edged with silver. After a long moment, the lion found balance. He took one dragging step, then another, the wrapped legs scraping through sand that resisted him. The brush line was close, and night was built for escape. Yet he did not run. He halted, head lowering, nostrils working as if he had found a scent that mattered more than pain. He turned back toward the thorn shadows, slow and unsteady. His ears angled forward, listening. A low sound rolled from his chest again, not the sharp thunder of a charge, but a broken vibration of strain. The man followed the lion's gaze and saw nothing at first, only grass bending, only the dark mass of fallen branch. Then the ground moved. Near the brush where the second line had trembled, a small shape stirred close to the earth. It was pressed flat as if the world was too heavy to lift. A flank fluttered with quick, shallow breaths. The man caught a faint glint of eye, wide and dull, then a flicker of ear pinned tight with fear. A cub, too young to stand strong, too still to make sound, body cooling into the night. The lion stepped toward it and stopped, trembling. His nose dipped, drawing in the cub's scent, whiskers quivering with each breath. He did not touch, not yet. The injured leg shook under him, and his tail traced one line in the sand. The man moved in a careful arc, never crossing between the lion and the small body. He knelt beside the cub and felt warmth through fur, faint but present. The snare line had brushed the cub's side, not tight enough to crush, but enough to trap in silence. The metal loop lay half buried, waiting for weight that never came. He slid the cutters under the wire and clipped it clean. Tension released with a snap that sounded far too loud. The cub flinched, then settled again, too drained to fight. The man wrapped it in cloth to hold heat, lifting with both hands as though carrying something made of bone and breath. For a moment, lion and man remained close, not in ownership but in shared urgency. The lion watched, eyes steady, body swaying. The man lowered the cloth-wrapped cub to the sand just within reach, then eased back, returning the space to the animal who belonged to it. The lion leaned forward, touched the bundle with his nose and exhaled slowly. In that breath was the choice that mattered. He did not claim the man and he did not claim the moment. He gathered what was his, life, warm and trembling, and turned toward the brush with a limp that did not stop him. The wind moved through the grass again, and the night swallowed their shapes, leaving only the soft scrape of paws fading into dark. Near dawn the cloud cover thinned, and pale light slipped into the thorn country like water finding a crack. The air carried that brief cold that comes before the sun returns, when leaves hold still and even insects quiet down. In the hollow, the sand had cooled into a firmer skin, marked by drag lines and shallow dents of resting bodies. The man was still there, seated low against a trunk, his kit closed, his hands empty. Across a stretch of grass, the lion lay half in shadow, half in washed gray morning. The bandage on his hind leg was darkened where the wound had seeped overnight, but the swelling no longer climbed as fiercely. His breathing was deeper now, slower, the kind that comes when an animal is no longer spending every second choosing between pain and survival. Nearby, the cub was pressed close to the lion's chest, tucked into the curve of foreleg and mane. When the light strengthened, the lion lifted his head and held it there. He tested the air with a long inhale, reading scent trails left by night wanderers and the damp promise of distant water. His ears turned toward the man, then away again. The man did not move. He let the lion keep the morning. Slowly the lion gathered himself. He rose in stages, forelegs first, then the heavy shift of hips as he brought his hindquarters under him. The injured leg touched down carefully, toes spreading for balance. For a moment he stood perfectly still, weight trembling through muscle and bone, learning what the ground felt like without wire pulling him back. Then he took one step and another. The cub stirred and tried to follow, unsteady, pausing when its small paws slid in sand. The lion turned his head, muzzle lowering. He brushed the cub once with the side of his face, a brief touch that guided it forward. The cub leaned into it, then found its footing again, moving closer to the lion's shoulder. The man rose just enough to ease pressure from his cramped legs, careful not to make noise. The lion's gaze met him across the distance. It was not softness and it was not threat. It was simply attention, clear, steady, and real. The man lifted one hand, palm open and low. "Go on," he said, barely louder than the wind. The lion blinked once, slow, and the tension in his shoulders eased. He turned away without haste. His tail followed in a loose arc, not high, not tucked, resting in that calm middle place where energy is being saved. The cub stayed close, pausing only when the bandaged leg made the older animal hesitate. Still, the lion kept going, placing his weight with patience. At the brush line he stopped again. The sun finally broke free of the clouds, lighting thorn tips and setting dew to a quiet shine. The lion looked back once, not as farewell, but as a final check of the space behind him. The man did not step forward. He only stood, small against the wide morning, and kept his hands empty. Then the lion moved into the grass and disappeared, his shape dissolving into the land the way wild things are meant to. The cub followed, a faint stumble corrected, and then nothing but bending stems where they had passed. The man waited until the last sound was gone. When he finally turned, he carried no animal, no proof beyond the wire coiled in his pack and the ache in his knees. He walked back into the brightening day with the steady pace of someone who understands that rescue is not possession. Behind him the wind crossed the hollow, smoothing the sand, and far off the grasslands shifted as the sun climbed.